The NFL season is back and better than ever. I hope everybody had the Sunday they were hoping for, and obviously a very great start to the NFL season on Sunday and, of course, Monday. But in this video, I'm going to be giving you guys my power rankings from week 1 going into week 2 of this season. Let's get right into this video. Before I get into this video, make sure you guys go follow my Twitter, Alex Regan NFL. I'm extremely active on there all throughout the season, and you'll get my takes immediately off the bat. But this is going to be my Google Sheets for my power rankings. I started this for the preseason a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to try to make this a series just so I can get consistent videos out midweek. So, starting off the list, we've got Arizona Cardinals, obviously. I don't think that they move up from 32. I know they put up a good fight against the Commanders. But the problem is what are they going to do throughout the rest of the season? They had a lucky defensive touchdown with the scoop and score. And they overall, I think, are still just the worst team. There's not much to go about them and their game. They had a solid game, but the Commanders aren't the best team, and I don't think they're gonna throw any punches against one of the better teams. But they really almost won that game, which is a scare for the Commanders. Obviously, the Houston Texans. C.J. Stroud's first game didn't look the best. I know he's still a rookie, and I'm gonna try to give him some time. But I wasn't the highest on C.J. Stroud out of Ohio State. I mentioned a lot of that within my draft videos. If you go watch those videos back. And overall, the Houston Texans defense and their secondary didn't look the best as well either. And the run game, especially on the goal line, they were just giving up very easy touchdowns, as it seems to like simple plays like inside zones. So I have them moving down to 31, but I think that they have still potential in later season if CJ Stroud gets clicking and Will Anderson really gets clicking to move up past this spot. The Tennessee Titans really looked bad. They really looked bad on Sunday. Of course, they're playing the Saints. Ryan Tannehill, maybe the absolute worst game from any quarterback of the day on Sunday. 3 interceptions. I don't think he threw a touchdown pass. I know, I think he did, but he had a horrible game. The defense did look a lot better, but the offense is. I'm way too concerned about the offense. The passing game is. It's struggling heavily, and Ryan Tannehill with like a 47 completion percentage, is that going to hold for the rest of the season? I have very serious question marks about the Tennessee Titans, and they were the worst pass defense last year, and they gave up 300 yards to Derek Carr, and Derek Carr isn't. I'll be honest, he's not the best. He's not the best quarterback. I wouldn't call him top 15. So what's going to happen when they face really good quarterbacks? They could easily give up 30 points against a better team. The Chicago Bears, really big disappointment. A really, really big disappointment on Sunday. They were easily manhandled by a Green Bay Packers team that I thought that they even surpassed. They got DJ Moore in the offseason. Justin feels like he was taking a massive step up. The defense looked like it could get better. And they just disappointed in all areas of the field. I mean, off-season acquisitions didn't really pan out in the game. I know it's week 1. Hopefully, they'll start to get more acclimated within the rest of the season. But Justin Fields didn't look great. They didn't run the ball as much as I wanted to. They did get a touchdown with Rashawn Johnson, which was nice for the rookie out of Texas. However, DJ Moore didn't get a ton of work. TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds, the two biggest offseason signings, especially at the linebacker position, they both played horrible. They allowed over 100 receiving yards in coverage. Both had under 50 PFF coverage grades. Their team just didn't look good, and they got put up 38 against the Green Bay Packers team, as I'll get to later. The Carolina Panthers, they're staying around the same. They did as I expected in the beginning. I didn't think C.J. Stroud was going to come out popping. They have a ton of new offensive skill position players that need to still gel. They've got a new head coach with Matt Wright, with Frank Reich. So I think they need still more time. But they played pretty decently against the Falcons. Bryce Young didn't have the best game, but it is his first game in the NFL. Can't overreact for one game. The Indianapolis Colts, though, this is a team that looked a lot better than I thought they were. The defense looked rejuvenated. They put up a good fight against a very good Jaguars offense, and with Anthony Richardson at quarterback, he looked a lot more polished than I thought he would look week 1. Anthony Richardson, extremely raw prospect out of Florida. And he surprisingly had good touch and accuracy on the ball. The Michael Pittman touchdown was his, I think, first touchdown outside of his rushing touchdown, his first passing touchdown. It did go for a while. I think it was like a 30-yard reception, so he did get lucky with that. But a 2-touchdown game is for your first game in your career for that raw of a prospect, and I think he had over a 60% completion percentage. Very good game from them, and I thought they could have even won this game with a scoop and score from DeForest Buckner, who looks very good as well. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, also another team that surprised me. They put up a very good fight against a Minnesota Vikings team who, in reality, I knew that the Vikings weren't as good as they were made out to be. They weren't a 13-4 team last year. You just don't go 11-0 in the NFL, obviously an NFL record, and they had major offseason downgrades. Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, Madison, they all looked pretty good. Jordan Addison had a touchdown. Madison had a touchdown. And Kirk Cousins went for 300, but their defense just didn't look any better against the Tampa Bay Bucs team that had to make a change from quarterback, went from Tom Brady to Baker Mayfield, and Baker Mayfield ended up winning with 2 touchdowns. Their defense it didn't even get fixed. I know they have Brian Flores now, a defensive coordinator, but it didn't look as great, and their offense wasn't the best at capitalizing in the red zone either. They only had 2 touchdowns there and ended up losing. But for the Denver Broncos, another team thought they were going to get much better with Sean Payton at head coach. They were very good in the first half, completely stalled in the second half. At least Russell Wilson looked a little bit better. I will say that. And the defense still, I think, is a top 10 unit. But outside of that, I don't know. They kind of look like the same Denver Broncos from last season. A stagnant offense, but a really good defense. And it's going to be all close games because the defense isn't going to allow points, but the offense won't score any points. Obviously, speaking about the Raiders, their offense was kind of how I expected. A few splash plays here and there. Devontae Adams with a few good plays. Jacoby Myers with 2 red zone touchdowns. I like their receiver core, and Jacoby Myers obviously was one of my favorite offseason additions. But their defense looked a lot better than I expected. Maybe it's because the Broncos' offense was bad, but only allowing, I think it was 16 or 15 points in the first half, or in the entire game. They allowed, I think, maybe 3 points at most in the second half. But a much better game from the Raiders' defense than I expect. However, I think later in the season, that defense is going to catch them. The Los Angeles Rams, I'm a victim of underrating them heavily. They looked very good. They played a very competitive team in the Seahawks and a good coach team with Pete Carroll, and they easily handled them. Sean McVay outcoached them a lot, especially on third downs. They converted a ton of them. Without Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, and Tutu Atwell, both went over 100 yards. Matthew Stafford looked at peak form. I didn't know how he was going to come off of that neck injury and UCL injury, but looks like he's back to normal. And then the defense will look also a lot better than I expected. Trading away Jalen Ramsey in the secondary is a big blow. They gave away Bobby Wagner after releasing him. Aaron Donald looked just as dominant as he usually is, and the Rams what look like they're going to have a better season than I expect, especially with Cooper Kupp coming back. Could we see them have a wild card push? Probably. Looking at how they were on Sunday, the Commanders. A little bit more shaky than I expected. I thought they were going to be a little bit more poised with Eric Bieniemy at quarterback or at offensive coordinator. Sam Howell at some times looked very good, especially with his touchdown to Brian Robinson in the end zone, and then his rushing touchdown. Those are 2 great moments from his game. But then obviously the scoop and score pick later in the game, not the best moment. And the defense was still good. I know they were facing a terrible offensive team with the Arizona Cardinals, who only put up, I think it was 1 touchdown all game. But we'll have to see how the rest of their season goes, especially because their division is so good with obviously 2 top 5 teams, as you can see on the left side. I'm only moving them down 1. They played mostly as I expected, but it was a very close game against the Cardinals. That scared me a little bit. The New Orleans Saints, I talked about it a little bit when we were with the Titans. They played good enough to where they won the game, but I also expected this outcome from the Saints, where the offense was going to be more stagnant than people expected. I don't think that this is the gunslinger offense where it's going to put up 20 plus every single game. I think that this is going to be a more defensive-minded team, obviously with Dennis Allen at head coach. Derek Carr struggled a little bit more than people expected, not that I expected. Obviously, with an interception and some very high, very low moments, which is the classic Derek Carr esque game. And their defense looked good, but obviously they looked good because the Tennessee offense looked extremely bad. Maybe because they made them look bad, but some of those accuracy from Ryan Tannehill bailed them out a couple of times, especially with like throws to Chigozie Okonkwo, maybe Tajee Spears, and to number 15. I forgot his name, but the Saints, they look like they're going to be a competitor within the NFC South. They are the second best team, I think, right now. But I still think the Falcons, who I'll talk about later, are still a step above them. The Vikings, bad loss against the Buccaneers. They were heavily favored, and they just ended up losing that game. Their defense doesn't look any better. I will say that. And their offense will obviously be their offense. Very high production. And they're obviously going to get better in the red zone. They're very high outproducing offense, but their defense is going to hurt them throughout the entire season. And the running game was very stagnant. Madison, I don't think, is an every down back. And, they don't really have a consistent back that they can go to. I think Madison's going to be their passing back. And once they face better passing defenses, they're going to be easily stopped on offense. And I hope that they don't face many great passing offenses because their secondary is still just has no depth. I don't know what they're going to do there. Giants at 19, they took a heavy step back, obliterated by the Cowboys. I wouldn't go so far to overreact to the Giants saying their season's over. I think that the Giants are still a very competitive team, 2, an underrated team, and 3, they win when it matters. I think that the Cowboys just outmatch their team, especially the Cowboys defense. They're either 2 or 1 in the NFL right now with their defense. Their defensive line, 7 sacks, like double-digit pressures, like almost, I think it was like 20 pressures, 1 defensive touchdown, also the pick 6. But I wouldn't blame it all on the Giants. I know it was just a tough circumstance, and the Cowboys got out to a really, really lucky start with a blocked field goal score, a pick 6 score, and a lot of sacks in the beginning of the game. But I do have some concerns about the Giants' offense, especially their offensive line. Their guards did not play well. Evan Neal really didn't play well. Saquon Barkley couldn't really get anything going on the ground because of the offensive line being inconsistent. I do have some question marks about the Giants. And their defense, especially through the run game. I know they stopped Dak Prescott because they have a pretty good passing defense with Adoree Jackson and Deontay Banks and Xavier McKinney at safety, but the run defense didn't look as great. Dexter Lawrence didn't have his superstar level game that he kind of needs to have for the Giants defense to be so successful in the trenches. The Pittsburgh Steelers, I had some of you guys telling me that the Pittsburgh Steelers were going to be an 11-win team. Where was that 11-win team on Sunday? Where was it? I know where they're facing the 49ers. I know they're facing the 49ers, but they had like 1 yard in the entire first half. I know it's the 49ers. But I thought this was supposed to be an improved offense. It looked like the exact same offense. Deontay Johnson hurt his hamstring. That's very bad news for their offense. They lose their premier route runner. George Pickens almost had a touchdown in the end zone. Freiermuth he went down with 2 injuries. He had a head injury and he had a chest injury too. But he did get a touchdown in the end zone. Pickett, I know that the pressure was getting home all day, but Pickett didn't look as great either. I know he had 1 pick, but it looked like there was almost 3 picks within that game. The Steelers were just not doing that great. And then on defense, in the first half, it was just completely an offensive masterpiece by Brock Purdy. He looked phenomenal coming back from injury. And then Christian McCaffrey obviously had a very good game on the ground. And then they, took the foot off the gas in the second half because, they were obviously going to win that game, and they did. But TJ Watt is definitely back. I'm very excited about that. Cameron Hayward is out. But their secondary, the Pittsburgh Steelers secondary, is the thing that scares me about their defense. I don't know how good it's going to be. with Pat Pete as their one, and then Pat Pete, I think he got scored twice on, and Porter Jr., number the 32nd overall pick. I don't think he had the best game either. So I am moving them both down by 4. Atlanta Falcons, they played exactly how I expected them. High rushing offense volume. They're going to run the ball a lot. Tyler Algier, phenomenal running back. Bijan Robinson, phenomenal running back. Their offensive line, great rushing offensive line. The running game, this. Their passing game, this. I'm gonna put my hand under the I'm gonna put my hand under the camera because yes, Desmond Ridder was accurate, but the volume was not there at all. They threw 15 times compared to rushing it like 30 plus times, and or he completed 15 passes. They only threw it like 20-ish times. Their passing volume will never be there. I don't think that Ridder has maybe the talent to be a 30-plus passer, and Arthur Smith's MO is running the ball and running the ball extremely efficiently. They had a really great game on the ground against the Panthers. That's going to be their entire offense this year. People thought that, Algier, he got Bijan Robinson's going to take all of his touches. No, they're definitely going to split the backfield, and we're even going to see Cordero Patterson get a lot of work as well at running back or at H-back or at wide receiver even possibly. But Drake London put up a donut, and Kyle Pitts only has like 3 targets. So don't expect this passing offense to be anything special. If we see them face a team where they have an extremely good rushing defense, maybe this team is going to struggle a lot. That's why I think, they're a big question mark on offense, because if they get stopped on their rushing attack, they're going to very much struggle on offense. The defense stepped up big time, though. Jesse Bates looked like a phenomenal addition. I know they're facing a weaker offensive opponent with Carolina and a rookie quarterback, but their defense looked like it stepped up. They're not a bottom 5 unit anymore, which is good. But moving to the biggest mover of the week, that's going to be the Green Bay Packers. Man, did they look very good, and they looked polished as well. Aaron Jones, 2-touchdown game, phenomenal. Jordan Love, he looked a lot more poised than I thought. If we're basing him on like a rookie, this is his second true official starting game. He played very well. I know he's had 3 years to develop, which is a very smart franchise move, making him sit under Aaron Rodgers. But he looked good, man. He looked good at the second half, very well. Had 2 very nice fade balls in the end zone. The defense looked a lot better than I expected as well against the Chicago offense, which I think would have taken a big step up. But within the trenches, they weren't getting anything within the run. Kenny Clark had a very good game, as well as Rashawn Gary, who's coming back from an ACL, who looked very good. So the Packers are my biggest movers. I think that they could, if they continue on this path, they could definitely win a playoff game. They looked very good after the catch as well. Important on the offense. For the New England Patriots, they also looked good against a very competitive team with the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that the Eagles were toying with them a lot in the second half, and they didn't obviously have their best game. But the New England Patriots were coming back a lot. Mac Jones looked much better with a true offensive coordinator, had 3 touchdowns, 2 to Kendrick Bourne, and over 300 yards. The concept looked a lot better, but the running game was just not there for the majority of the game. And I think if it was, they would have put up a better fight against the Eagles. But I really didn't think the Eagles were taking the game as seriously as. After the second half, it seemed like they were going to win, and they took the foot off the gas until they really needed to, and then they just chewed the clock out. But the Patriots, overall, good game, and moving on to the Cleveland Browns. They are the second biggest mover of the week because they looked phenomenal on defense. What a defensive win for them against a high-powered offense in the Cincinnati Bengals. They were just getting so much pressure on Joe Burrow. I think they held him to under 100 yards passing. He had a under 50% completion percentage, if I'm not wrong, and they just could not get anything on the ground. There were multiple 4-and-outs or 3-and-outs. And Myles Garrett, which is wrecking havoc against Orlando Brown Jr., who was a massive offseason signing for them at left tackle. The offense, I think I was right about Deshaun Watson. I don't think he's like that passing, but he did have a touchdown on the ground. But passing wise, 50% completion percentage. Not the best game through the air. Nick Chubb had 100 yards as well. Nick Chubb's going to be phenomenal this year. I think he could easily lead the league in rushing, and it looks like that. The receiver core did fine. Uh, they didn't have that many targets as well. But I think that this offense is going to be a heavy groundwork offense, and they're going to rely a lot on their defense, as Jim Schwartz looks like a phenomenal ad at defensive coordinator. The Seattle Seahawks, one of the biggest disappointments of the week. They did not play good against the Rams team, which I thought that they should easily overpower on offense. In the first half, they looked a lot better. They had a touchdown to DK Metcalf with Geno Smith, but outside of that, they looked completely overmatched. On defense, the Seattle defense isn't that great on the ground, but it wasn't the ground game that was killing them. It was the air raid attack. Tariq Woolen and Devin Witherspoon, two great corners. I think Tariq Woolen had a good game, but Witherspoon did not have the best game. And whoever was in the slot, if it was Kobe Bryant, if it was I don't know who was exactly in the slot, but they were getting murdered because obviously Tutu Atwell and Patrick Nacua, two slot guys, put up both 100 yards, and Quandre Diggs and Jamal Adams. I don't know how much Jamal Adams played, but they didn't. The Seahawks secondary did not have the best game, as well as their linebacking core of that Jordan Brooks. Jordan Brooks is their main Mike linebacker, and Bobby Wagner just does not have that athletic ability anymore to cover these guys in the slot or in the tight end. But the Seahawks, I think they'll come back better. Their team is just too good to not succeed in this week of the NFC, and I think they'll bounce back. But there are better teams right now, so I'm moving them down by 4. Baltimore Ravens, I'm only moving them down by 1 because there are a few teams that just shot up the board in this spot. But the Ravens, great, consistent, solid game against the Houston Texans, who they severely outmatched. Lamar Jackson didn't have the greatest game. J.K. Dobbins tore his Achilles. That's the biggest negative of the game. But Zay Flowers looked phenomenal. He had 10 touches, or he had multiple or over 10 touches, and I think he got 80, 90 yards, something like that. He looked like the main receiver contributor for that team, and he has a good chance to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. I've always been very high on Zay Flowers. Their defense looked also very good, especially within the ground game. They made Damian Pierce's game very rough. I think he had 3 yards per carry all game. But there were just many teams that just shot up the board. So even though the Ravens moved down 1, they're still in that playoff race, and they look like right now the best team in the AFC North if the Bengals continue to slip. Probably the worst news of the week was Aaron Rodgers tearing his Achilles. Humongous blow for the New York Jets, who looked like they were potentially Super Bowl contenders. I know some of you are going to hate me saying that, but they really do. Imagine if that defense had Aaron Rodgers and how they played against the Buffalo Bills, and definitely managed to beat them. But I have to have them below the Buffalo Bills right now because Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles. Because now you have Zach Wilson at quarterback, and Zach Wilson played fine, below average yesterday. If he's a long-term quarterback going forward, we've had 2 straight years of him. We know exactly how he plays. Are they a playoff team with him? Probably not. They had to make a midseason switch last year, benching him from Mike White, which didn't really work either. The Jets are consistently in quarterback hell. Probably the most unluckiest fan base in the world, definitely. But very good win. It's defensive win, 4 turnover against the Buffalo Bills. I've been saying this for such a long time. The Jets are a top 3 defense, only probably behind the Cowboys and the 49ers, and they're right up there. They're the exact same tier as them. And I just really hope this offense can get it going. Breece Hall coming back was phenomenal. Had a great game, 127 yards on 10 touches. Dalvin Cook, I didn't love the signing, and he looked pretty slow. He looked like he was worn. And that's why you don't sign older running backs who have had a lot of tread on their tires. But at least Breece Hall is back. The rushing game looks pretty good. The offensive line was very shaky, especially within the beginning of the game. That's why Aaron Rodgers got sacked and then tore his Achilles. But moving on to the Buffalo Bills, in the same breath, their offense was stagnant against a very good defense. I don't blame Josh Allen all for that. The Jets are just a very hard passing defense to attack, especially with their coverage schemes. They're just hard to attack. But Josh Allen does take the blame for a good amount of those interceptions. He had 2 arm punts. Those were obviously picks, but I don't blame him for that throw with Gabe Davis. That's a tight window, and that was also a very huge play by Jordan Whitehead. But that fumble, that was on the center. That's a muffed snap. And yeah, the Buffalo Bills offense got some question marks there. I have been saying this with the receiver too. Do they have anybody outside of Stephon Diggs? Monster game with Stephon Diggs, over 100 yards and a touchdown. But after that, there really is nobody. Gabe Davis is not that guy for the number 2. He's your deep threat. Who should be your 3? They need to find a 2. Maybe it's Kincaid. Maybe it's Knox. Maybe it's James Cook in the backfield. But they need to find their 2 receiver. And then on defense, very good game. Matt Milano is obviously a phenomenal player. But they need to figure out that safety position. I know that Poyer and Hyatt are still there, but Poyer and Hyatt both had bad games, especially Jordan Poyer, who was just getting mauled on the run all night. The safety help was just not there against the run. And I know he's coming back from a very big neck injury, but there might needs to be some more safety help, and they're also getting older. They're both 32 years old, and I think that they looked a lot worse. And then with their cornerback unit, Benford, if the Jets had Aaron Rodgers, Benford would have been attacked all night. And then Tre'Davious White gave up a red zone touchdown. I don't think Tre'Davious White had a bad game, but Matt Milano was carrying that unit, and he had an interception as well. I think their defense has some holes, potentially for better offensive teams than the Jets. So I'm moving them down quite a bit by 5, actually. The Chargers, what's going to happen when you give Justin Herbert a good offensive coordinator? You're going to put up 30 points a game easily, and you're going to be way better against the run. Joe Lombardi, I don't know why he didn't like to attack the run. Austin Eckler looked like he was unlocked. With Kellen Moore, was much, much better between the tackles than he was. And the zone concept for the offensive line looked a lot better. Rashawn Slater, returning from his tricep tear season ending last year, the offensive line looked phenomenal with him. And Joshua Kelly also had a really good game as well. I told you guys in my record prediction that they're going to try to run more in a dual backfield system, and it looks like Kelly and Austin Eckler are going to be that dual backfield, with Kelly being that change of pace back and Eckler being the workhorse. But he only got 17 carries, and I think Kelly got 10, so that's a good split there. And then Justin Herbert, obviously, but the passing game looked a lot worse. Outside of Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen had a big game, but Mike Williams, not a great game. Quentin Johnson didn't get a lot of touches. The passing game is something that'll look to improve, especially with Justin Herbert being so good down the field with his arm talent. But the rushing game, really good rushing game. The defense is just not there. You don't have enough talent within the secondary. I don't think you have enough defensive line talent. You got Joey Bosa. That's kind of it. The defense is going to have some holes in it that teams will attack. And you saw the Miami Dolphins do that within the middle of the field because the Chargers kind of lack linebackers after losing Drew Tranquill in the offseason. Moving on to the Jacksonville Jaguars, I'm only moving them up a little bit because I think that they should be a really good offense. They didn't play the best against the Colts. Their defense also didn't play the best, especially that linebacker unit and the defensive line unit outside of Josh Allen. Trayvon Walker had a better game. It seems like he's improved over the offseason, but that offense should be super high-powered. Everybody looked like they were getting work. Calvin Ridley, had a 100-yard game. Zay Flowers had a touchdown. Evan Ingram had a big play. And Christian Kirk's obviously one of Trevor Lawrence's favorite players. Tank Bigsby had a touchdown, and Travis Etienne also had a touchdown. They're just such a well-balanced offense. They should be one of the top 10 teams all year, and their defense is the biggest question mark for them, whether they're going to, whether they're going to improve a lot or whether they're going to stay roughly the same like they did last year. The defense could potentially lose them a few games. But the Lions, man, do the Lions look like one of the best NFC teams in the league, and they looked a lot better than I thought against the Kansas City Chiefs. I thought that they weren't quite as ready. Look at last year; they were like 2-7, and then they popped off and finished with 9 wins and a winning record last year. But did they start this season very, very well with a outstanding win against the Kansas City Chiefs? I have them projected as my third best team in the NFC. As it all said and done, I have them as a 10-win team. And what a way to start off the year. Their offense looks very good, and when they get Jameson Williams back, they're going to have that deep threat to really help them in the third level. They've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's ultra consistent. They've got a good rushing attack with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Hopefully, Jahmyr Gibbs will get more playing time and more touches as the season goes on, which I project. And their defense took a humongous step up in the offseason with big offseason acquisitions like Brian Branch, who had a pick six, Cameron Sutton, who played well in the secondary, CJ Gardner-Johnson, who's going to be your ball hawking guy, Jack Campbell as your as your now strong side linebacker or middle linebacker. They got much better, as well as Aiden Hutchinson in the offseason. Really like how they're going. I think they should be a top 10 team throughout the majority of the year. Cincinnati Bengals, they were one of the biggest disappointments, but I won't overreact too much. That's why I'm only moving them down once, or moving them down twice. I don't know really what happened with the offense. I don't know whether it's because the Browns defense is just really that good, or whether it's because Joe Burrow had a bad game, whether because people weren't getting open, whether he wasn't throwing the ball fast enough, whether the offensive line was degrading too much. I don't really know what happened. I'll probably have to go back in the film and watch it a little bit there. But the Bengals had a rough outing. It kind of reminds me of last year where the Bengals had a terrible start to this season. But the Bengals, historically bad team to start off within the Joe Burrow timeline. And hopefully they'll pick it up like they did last year and win a lot of games down the stretch, which I hope, and that's what I'm thinking. That's why I'm only moving them down 2 right now. Won't overreact and get them ass out of the top 10 like some people are to a big loss like that. Similar to the Giants, I'm not going to overreact heavily to a big loss. Let's see how they go within the first 4 to 5 weeks of the season. But the defense looked pretty good, especially their passing defense. And I thought that losing Jesse Bates was going to be a humongous deficit for their passing offense. Maybe it's the fact that Deshaun Watson isn't the best passer anymore, whether that really helped them with their defense. But their run defense could only do so much. Trey Hendrickson had a good game, but their rushing defense can only do so much against Nick Chubb and Deshaun Watson. That's just a hard rushing tactic to go against. There were a few big runs that guys like Jerome Ford even ran off as well. Moving on to the Dallas Cowboys, they are a top 5 team, and I think that they definitely solidified that against the win against the Giants. 40 points, defensive touchdown, special teams touchdown. Tony Pollard had 2 touchdowns. Keontae Turpin even had a touchdown, and they all did it without Dak, obviously. But if you implement Dak, they're probably a top 10 team, or a top 10 offense, my fault, and a top 3 defense. So they should be my 3rd or 4th best team through the NFC all year. Probably going to be the 3rd. They what an outstanding win against the Giants. We'll see if that translates to the Jets next week. Moving on to the Miami Dolphins, I said this a lot over the offseason. This offense is going to be scary. They did some extremely creative things in the game. If you guys noticed, they lined up Tyreek Hill at tight end. They lined up Alex Ingold in the backfield, who's a fullback. I still can't believe that they lined up Tyreek at tight end. Tua Tagovailoa, extremely slept-on player. If you hate him, you're either an idiot or extremely biased or just hate Tua for some reason. Extremely accurate down the field, extremely accurate within the middle of the field and the second level. That made them so much better. And when Tua is healthy, they're probably either the second best or the best offense in the NFL. I'm going to make that statement right now. They probably are a better offense than the Chiefs, to be honest, with Tyreek Hill, who could easily go for 2,000 yards. I mean, they look unstoppable on offense. I know that the secondary wasn't the best with the Chargers, but everything was open. And they didn't even work in Jalen Waddle. They were working in their tight end, Austin Smythe, and number 85, Clark Kraft, and Braxton Berrios. I mean, their offense is just unlimited, and they didn't even work in their ground game with guys like Devon Achane, who they drafted in the 3rd round, with Raheem Mostert. And, I mean, they're just going to be one of the best offenses in the NFL, and their defense didn't have the best game, but their defense made some big improvements. When Jalen Ramsey comes back, we're definitely going to see that later in the season. The San Francisco 49ers, I mean, they're just there's no question about them. They're the best defense in the NFL, even though they lost to Michael Ryan, head coach of the Houston Texans. Now they're still the best defense in the NFL, locked up Nick Bosa for a long time, and they've got Tanaloa Hufanga, Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, Dre Greenlaw, Tre'Davious Ward, Alec Armstead. They signed Javon Hargrave. They're just too good of a defense. And then their offense with Brock Purdy is very consistent. Brandon Ayuk is their one. Don't let the contract fool you. Deebo Samuel is just not the one. He's really good after the catch, but Brandon Ayuk is going to have a humongous step up this year after he took a humongous step up last year. And then George Kittle is obviously one of his favorite targets. He was targeted a few times within the red zone. And the rushing game with Christian McCaffrey should be elite. They look like a top 5 offense. They look like a top 1 defense. They're probably going to be a top 3 team all year. And Brock Purdy looks like he's going to be that Jimmy G ultra consistent quarterback for them pretty much all season, barring injury. But the Philadelphia Eagles, I'm going to keep them at 2. I know they didn't have the biggest statement win week 1 against the Patriots, but they didn't really need to. They looked like they were in the driver's seat pretty much all game. The defense had a pick 6. The defense had a solid game. They allowed 3 touchdowns, but their defense should be one of the best units in the NFL. Jalen Carter looked phenomenal in his first game playing. He has the league lead in pressures right now at 9 with and obviously he was my number 1 prospect in the draft. And great game from him. Solid game from the defense. Solid game from the offense. I don't think they did bad enough to warrant them going down in my list. And then I'm going to keep the Chiefs at 1. They're the best team who lost on Thursday. And I kind of went over this in my video with them. Their receiver core is just something that I worry about. I mean, who is their one? Who is their wide receiver 1? Are they going to have? I mean, what happens if Travis Kelce is hurt again? What happens if they're going to bracket Travis Kelce? Patrick Mahomes is going to struggle, and the receivers were just dropping too many balls. I mean, Sky Moore was a humongous disappointment. Kadarius Toney had 4 drops, and overall the offense looked stagnant without Travis Kelce, and we'll have to see how that entails for the rest of the season. Hopefully that they can pick up their receiver core, and they might have to even trade for a number 1 guy within the trade deadline. But their defense looked good even without Chris Jones, but they're re-adding him as he signed a 1-year contract today as I'm recording it on Tuesday. 1 year, $25 million. It's really great to have him back on the field. But their secondary took big steps up, especially with Trent McDuffie, who had a forced fumble. And their linebacking core, it looked really good as well with Nick Bolton as their Mike. He's really good. And the defense, they had a few good surprise guys, like number 55, who I forgot his name. But the Kansas City Chiefs, I think, are still the best team in the league. They're the reigning champions. I don't think they did enough to warrant them being like moved down, like to the Eagles, like to the 49ers. I wouldn't put them up to the Chiefs yet because we got to remember this is the Kansas City Chiefs. This is Patrick Mahomes. This is Andy Reid. Let's not overreact just yet. But that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you guys let me know your power rankings. Let me know how you think my rankings are. Let me know some suggestions for this list. And I'll see you guys in the next video.